Hello everyone, welcome to GS Booster Shot, your daily dose for GS preparations. In our today's lecture, we are going to talk about India's rapid urbanization, the challenges it has brought in, and the opportunities which lie at our forefront. This topic is important from GS perspectives because urbanization and its related aspects are covered up in the syllabus of GS 1, 2, 3 in all these three GS papers. So, by means of this lecture, we are also going to cover up the discussion on Sunset TV's perspective show with respect to the same topic. इससे पहले कि हम lecture शुरू करें, we need to understand the main purpose behind this very show. In order to ace examination, it is not needed that we should expand our sources of information. What is required for us is to curtail our sources of knowledge. By covering one topic each day, our kitty would be filled up with so many topics that we won't really need to look outside of that. So let's start with our today's topic. So let us first see the state of India's urbanization. At the time of independence, about 14% of India's population lived in urban centers. India today happens to be the second largest urban system of the world with respect to the number of people living in urban areas in the world today. So it took us about 6 decades after independence to double this 14% of population to about 34% of population living in urban areas today. However, the estimates with respect to expanding this 34% of population to 50% of population living in urban areas, it is going to take us less than about 10 years to achieve that very feat now. So now the pace of urbanization has really picked up. So there are various push and pull factors, as we know, that bring rural people to the cities. In today's time, Mahatma Gandhi is saying that India resides in its villages. Very soon this saying is going to become redundant. Urban areas are engines of economic growth and employment. They today contribute more than 50% to our country's GDP. And over here, we can see the incentive of enhancing and promoting urbanization rather than preventing rural people to come to urban centers. Moreover, density of population in a given area has often been categorized with a negative notion. Density को हमेशा एक गलत notion के हिसाब से देखा जाता है. However, if we look at our past, we will realize that density of population has been the sole reason for the development of some of the great civilizations of the world. It is only when people start living in close vicinity of one another that new types of jobs and employments take up. So this is the state of India's urbanization. Now let us see the challenges with respect to urbanization and the rapid pace of it. Now first of all, one thing that we need to understand is that planning today cannot be left to market forces. Various challenges that today we face with respect to urbanization, such as traffic congestion, sewage problems, urban flooding, all of these problems have been somewhat result of lack of planning also. In 1700s, when urbanization started, it was felt that the chief problem of urban centers was lack of civic amenities. By 1900s, urbanization took up its pace because of industrialization taking up in the West. And at that point in time, when people started living in even more close vicinity, then the need to correct this lack of civic facilities problem was felt. And at that point in time in London, zoning requirements were brought in, development control requirements were also brought in. Now, with respect to India, some of the chief problems with respect to urbanization that we face is with respect to planning for land use and zoning. Because in urban centers, land is limited and therefore it has to be seen as to how land can be used most effectively. Then, functioning of property market and property governance. Let us take example of Bombay. So, in Bombay, with respect to housing, if we are to see today, there isn't any deficit. There are a lot of apartments in Bombay. However, what is happening? all of these apartments are, many of them are empty. Why? Because these apartments are being used for the property market. International investors come in these markets and they invest in these apartments, and these apartments lie vacant because these investors are waiting for the prices of these apartments to give up. While on the same hand, there are people who are forced to live in crowded areas. In this very manner, there is a need and requirement for property governance in urban areas. Access to serviced lands and affordable housing. Now, a city is basically not run by affluent people. All sorts of class of people are required for the better functioning of people, for the better functioning of the city, and therefore we need actually affordable housing in the cities in order to prevent coming up of slums and to prevent urban poverty as well. Then, access to mass transit systems and road networks. Every now and then we can see that a new flyover is coming up in every city today. Creating a favorable environment for starting, operating and growing a business. So basically, even if government decides to build up a city, however, if that very city is not having business opportunities, then slowly and slowly that city is going to become vacant, and therefore we need to have specific requirements and we need to see as to what sort of an industries can be brought into those cities for the better functioning of those cities. In this very manner only, many new cities have planned IT sectors and developed proper areas for coming up of IT companies, and rather have leased lands for very cheap prices to IT companies. Why do they do this? This is basically done so as to provide business opportunities in a city. Then, urban flooding and climate change impact on civic amenities. Of late, what we are seeing is that now rain, with respect to rainfall is not evenly divided during the entire time. Now we can see that at a particular point in time, large amount of rainfall takes place, and what this do is that it tests the limit of cities' sewerage system, and this leads to urban flooding. Despite of, if on an aggregate, अगर हम aggregate पे देखेंगे तो हमें ये पता चलेगा कि इस सिटी ने एवरेज में साल में जितनी रेनफॉल रिसीव करनी चाहिए थी उतनी ही रेनफॉल रिसीव करी है. However, what happens is that entire amount of rainfall happens in just about a matter of 3 days, and this results into urban flooding. And in this very manner also, it becomes difficult for planners to understand कि कितनी capacity की drainage system बनाने हैं. Now, with respect to World Bank has attributed our problems, the problems that we are facing with respect to urbanization, to certain key points. What are these points? Let us see. Number one is empowerment deficit, limited, overlapping, fragmented, functional assignments resulting in unclear accountability in the city level. Now, हम cities में देखते हैं कि large amount of development work, the burden is on the shoulders of municipalities. However, on the other hand, we also see that they have lesser powers in order to give effect to those things. And in this very manner, when there is not a clear-cut division of powers between municipalities and the state government, in that very respect, it is difficult to put accountability with respect to the success or failure of any project. Then there is again resource deficit, limited revenue generation powers and inappropriately targeted intergovernmental transfers resulting in inadequate local government financial resources. Now, municipalities and metropolitan corporations, they are categorized with resource deficit more than often in our country. And why is this so? Because unlike our MLAs and MPs, what happens is that the local elected leaders are most close to the people, and if they try and seek to impose taxes on the people, then people would naturally not have them in good light. Besides this, their powers and resources to raise money is also very limited. In India, somewhat we can today relate, if not entirely, the municipal administration to that of the British times also, if I am not to exaggerate it. But why is this so? Because despite of having all sorts of responsibilities, the chief responsibilities that people require from their representatives with respect to access to water, access to affordable housing, access to roads, access to sanitary facilities, all these facilities are basically being put on the shoulders of the municipal level administration, whereas the resources and the powers lies at different centers of the government. Then again, accountability deficit. Despite of elections, the right to information, transparency structures, roles and mandates are unclear. Lastly, delivery deficit, insufficient provision and maintenance of municipal services and networks. So what happens is, even after creation of certain municipal facilities, what happens is there are not enough funds for their upkeep, and this leads to delivery deficit at a later stage. Now, in the context of solving this urban problems dilemma, the government brought in the smart city mission. The smart city mission is geared towards creating 100 model cities in the country, based on which then we would shift to creating such model cities in other tier 1 and tier 2 cities as well. So this very mission is based around people, process and technology. It is having a bottoms up approach. स्मार्ट सिटी मिशन के अंदर जो की एस्पेक्ट है वो ये है दैट इट टेक्स इनटू अकाउंट पब्लिक कंसल्टेशन, एंड पब्लिक कंसल्टेशन के द्वारा प्रॉब्लम्स को आइडेंटिफाई किया जाता है एंड उसके इफेक्टिव सॉल्यूशंस को ढूंढा जाता है, एंड इसके अंदर हेल्प ली जाती है टेक्नोलॉजी की भी. एंड इन दिस वेरी मैनर वी नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड दैट problems of smart cities or problems of cities that India faces, whatever problems we are facing, these cannot be generalized, and therefore we need to bring up indigenous solutions to these problems. Therefore there needs to be an integration of knowledge from foreign centers as well as indigenous models that these cities are developing. So 3 models of projects जो इस मिशन के अंतर्गत लिए जाते हैं वो है रेट्रोफिट, जो पुरानी चीज़ें हैं उन्हीं को ठीक करना, रीडेवलपमेंट, ऑलरेडी बेस्ड मॉडल्स, ऑलरेडी बेस्ड फैसिलिटीज़ जो हैं अगर उनको यूज़ में नहीं आ रही हैं तो आइडेंटिफाइंग द एरियाज which are stopping the effective use of those facilities and redeveloping them in such a manner that these facilities can be used to fullest extent. And then there is the greenfield projects. As we can see that today cities are setting up cycle stands everywhere, they are making provisions for urban cycling. So 3 areas of focus in this era, popularly known or referred to as Anthropocene's epoch. Anthropocene's epoch क्या होती है? Anthropocene's epoch एक जियोलॉजिकल टाइम पीरियड है जो कि रिलेट करता है उस टाइम पीरियड को जब ह्यूमन बीइंग्स के जो एक्टिविटीज हैं would be having significant impact on planet's climate and ecosystem. Today we cannot forget the impact of climate on our urban livings. And why is this happening? Because of human activities themselves. So if we are to sum up 3 key points with respect to or under the guidance of which urbanization has to take place, and 3 things that urbanization needs to achieve. What are these 3 things? These points were given to us in this perspectives discussion that I was talking to you about. Number 1 is with respect to mitigation and adaptation to climate change. Now climate change is going to be a reality, and what we need to understand is that we are totally not going to be able to escape its effects, and therefore there is a need for creation of mitigation and adaptation measures, which means that urban infrastructure needs to be resilient. Then protecting our biodiversity. Urbanization should not mean loss of flora and fauna, and therefore there is requirement that in urban areas also, for the better living aspect, we have to protect our biodiversity in urban areas also. Lastly and most importantly, ensure human wellness. How are we going to achieve this? We are going to sum up this lecture in 5 do's and the 5 requirements through which we can tackle the problems of urbanization. So, and what should these problems, how should these problems be solved? First of all, there is a requirement of closing the urban service divide, that is access to basic services for all. It means that it is not, be it hospitalization, be it education, urban centers need to have facilities which are accessible to all and not just certain influential classes. Otherwise, there is going to be development of a new class of urban poor that we have lately been witnessing. Then, livable and connected neighborhoods, creating affordable housing, which would be a key to attract talented and skilled workers. So, housing requirements has to be met in such a manner that there is also provision for affordable housing. Urban centers should not be categorized with high price valued properties in which only rich can live in, because in order for the rich class to also live in these very areas, there is a requirement for a lot of people who are going to be a part of this entire ecosystem, who are going to provide with useful skills and talents. Therefore, there is a requirement of interconnecting neighborhoods in such a manner that every neighborhood is also connected to a neighborhood which provides affordable housing. This is essential for stopping the development of slums also. Then, integrating blue-green infrastructure with urban planning. ब्लू इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर से हमारा मतलब है वाटर बॉडीज, ग्रीन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर से हमारा मतलब है पार्क्स, फील्ड्स एंड सच थिंग्स. सो ब्लू ग्रीन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर should be essential requirement of urban planning and should be thoroughly integrated in it. Then city region planning. Now अगर ये एक सिटी है तो इसके पेरीफेरी में there are lot of regions, रूरल एरियाज भी आ जाते हैं, एग्रीकल्चर एरियाज भी आ जाते हैं. नाउ ये दिल्ली है, अगर दिल्ली के आसपास पंजाब और हरियाणा के लॉट ऑफ फार्म्स, सो व्हाट इज हैपनिंग, यहाँ पे स्टबल बर्निंग होती है एंड यहाँ का धुआं उठ के दिल्ली में जाता है एंड यहाँ पे पॉल्यूशन कर देता है. सो हाउ इज दिल्लीज पॉल्यूशन प्रॉब्लम वुड बी सॉल्व्ड? वुड दिस बी सॉल्व्ड just by imposing or taking certain measures which are limited to Delhi? No, that is not possible. Today, there are certain problems that urban cities face which cannot be solved by implementing policies in certain geographic or administrative area of that very city. However, there are problems which are associated with regions, and therefore, the region that is surrounding cities, those regions also needs to be planned along with the city. Lastly, learning to leverage data. As we all know that data is the new gold today, and we need to learn to leverage this data so as to make informed decision. Now today in about 71 cities today we are having urban command centers. And these urban command centers worked as COVID war rooms during the COVID pandemic. These urban command centers were used for us to collect data and give informed decisions on the basis of that very data to solve problems also. So in this very manner, it is required that we need to know how to collect data and how to use that very data in order to achieve all of these objectives. So this is all with respect to urbanization. I am hopeful that you must have got many new points to make your answers more attractive, because although we all are going to talk about the same issue, what is going to make a difference is how we present those issues. So this is all with respect to today's lecture. Should you have any doubt, Feel free to put your doubts in the comment section. I'll be more than happy to reply to them. Thank you and have a nice day.